Wait for it.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, we're on.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay, wait just a minute.
Wait for
There
it.
it comes.
Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We'll get through with the fancy
Sparkles.
graphics.
Fancy graphics. Yeah, sparkles.
Is that fancy graphics?
I didn't.
Sparklies.
They're kind of old hat now.
I know.
We
I am
have to
old.
maybe come up with something else, or
I am old hat.
I still
you
like
are an old
sparkles.
hat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's begin by saying the blessing. If I can get it up. Join me. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with thy commandments, and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of the Torah. And in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzavanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. You know, it says in Proverbs 15, 8 through 10, Yahweh detests the sacrifices of the wicked but delights in the prayers of the upright. Yahweh detests the way of the wicked but loves anyone who pursues righteousness. Discipline is severe for one who leaves the way, and whoever can't stand correction will die.
We're all in
Pretty-
trouble.
Pretty,
Pretty hard words, huh?
pretty harsh.
That's almost like if your right hand sins.
Cut it off. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or
Now.
your eye.
got a little deal here.
Took out your eye too.
The little chiastic structure that's this Torah portion, y'all remember what it is?
I'm sure we saw it last year.
It starts with Israel are oppressed, and it ends with the promise of their deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has the birth and youth of Moses and the bricks without straw. Why are the birth and youth of Moses and the bricks without straw connected? Because birth and youth are where you learn and you're tested. In other words, he spent 40 years before he was called. And bricks without straw is where the Israelites were tested before they were. And then we have Moses flees to Midian and Moses returns. And then Moses at the burning bush and Moses' miraculous power. So,
Both miracles.
and what do we have in the middle? The
Moses
divine
leads
name
them out.
revealed. Kind of,
I am that I am.
yeah. By whose authority do we live? What governs our actions? Why is it important?
That's all.
Right.
God's authority, His word.
I hear footsteps in the hall.
You do?
All right. It's Mr. Chris.
Chris?
Are you solo today?
No, she's coming.
Oh, she's coming?
Drop stuff
Drop
off.
stuff off in the kitchen.
Okay.
So-
I understand that. I knew that. Okay. The Torah states that it was by the angel of the Lord. We're going to the angel of the Lord who appeared to Moses in a flame of fire in the midst of a bush. But then the Torah goes on to say that the Lord, Yahweh, saw Moses drawing near the bush, while God, Elohim, called out to him. God, Elohim, then commanded Moses to remove his sandals and identified himself as the God of Abraham, Elohi Avraham, the God of Isaac, Elohi Isaac, and the God of Jacob, Elohi Yaakov. In short, in the beginning, where the name is revealed, God was presented as the angel of the Lord, Yahweh, God Elohim, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all of which refer to the one true God. So, anyway, I like to reveal the end at the beginning.
So we know
Good
where
morning.
we're going.
I look at it this way about the angel of the Lord thing.
Mhm.
If he can create something out of nothing, then why can't he speak through one of his angels? You know, his voice come through one of the angels.
That's not what we're told, is it?
Okay.
Are you sure he didn't?
I have no clue.
I think that the angel of the Lord is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. That's my belief. Okay, portion 1, Exodus 1:1-17. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, "Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies, fight against us, and escape from the land." Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel, so they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves, and made their lives bitter and with hard service, in mortar and brick, and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other Puah, "When you serve as midwives to the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live." But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded him, but let the male children live. Okay, why are the names of the sons listed again in this portion? Why does it begin by listing the names?
So we have a very good understanding of who they are.
Names are very important, and the history of them being there is important.
So would you think that it's to indicate how much God treasured his people?
Mm-hmm.
That he mentions their names? So, I have some idiotic questions here.
Yes,
Why are the tribes of Israel listed in different order than in the scripture? Why are they in this order, in that order, and so forth? You know why?
So you can look at the names and see a message.
Do you think that all the tribes were equal?
No.
Okay. Are we considered equal in the sight of God?
Yes.
All men are created equal. I think it's the same thing here. God said, "These are all my people, and I will direct them how I want to."
Doesn't matter how big or small they are.
That doesn't matter how big or small. So I think that he lists them in different order so that we understand that he's not trying to put one tribe over another. Now he says, from this tribe I'll produce kings, this one I'll produce priests, I'll do these different things. But he doesn't say, I'm going to honor this tribe one above the other anywhere.
Doesn't treat them any differently.
Right. Yeah. If they mess up, he treats them just as bad. And if they are obedient, he treats them just as good.
Fair God. He's fair.
Just. That's correct.
Yeah.
Now there's a term in Hebrew, it's hashkah pratit. Hashkah pratit. The term hashkah pratit refers to God's personal supervision of our lives. Hashkah means supervision, and pratit means individual or particular. In other words, God directs the destiny of every single Israelite in the world. Meaning we are guided by His Word. So
you can highlight color.
what I'm getting at is that people that are what we refer to as Israelites, but grafted into Israel, and pursue His commandments, are guided by His Word. And so in that vein, we are guided directly by Him. In other words, if we pursue His righteousness, then we are trying to, it's like I said before, y'all may not have heard this. How do you make friends with someone?
Like what they like.
Be a friend.
Don't
Yeah, you
like
have to
what
be a
they
friend.
don't
You want them to like the things that you like and dislike the things you dislike. In other words, you meet somebody and you say, don't you love reading the Torah? You want them to like the things you love. Well, it's the same with God. In other words, God wants us to love the things He loves and hate the things He hates. And what does He love? He loves His words and the application of that word in our lives.
If you want to be an American, you study their laws, you learn how to live and to be a citizen.
Speak their
If you
language.
want to be a citizen of Israel, you study the
No,
laws,
you
you
don't
learn
have
how to
to.
be a citizen.
That's correct.
You don't have to speak the language.
You should learn to speak their language too.
You should. America
Very
decided
helpful.
America decided that you don't have to do that. You
Okay.
want to please everybody.
In what special way did God bless Israel in Egypt?
They multiplied.
Yeah, they
It
grew.
didn't matter how mistreated they were. They
Yeah, right. They were fruitful as a nation, and they multiplied. The sages say, I love this. I've said this before. It's great. The sages say that what do you call it? The Talmud say that women gave birth to 6 babies at a time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
Well, this is the way that they said, because it says they were fruitful and multiplied greatly.
Are they
said,
getting that because the midwife's name is Pua?
Pua. I don't know. Hush up.
Because it's too hard to spell.
Oh. Which you need to throttle yourself.
They're going to have to beat on him or something.
Okay,
Thick.
they say that
This morning.
fruitful equals 1, increased equals 2, multiplied equals 3, grew strong equals 4, vary is 5, and vary is 6. So they put all that together and
What was
said
5 and 6?
very, very,
Oh,
very, very. So that's the way they said there was 6 births at a time.
So you mean you don't
think
have
they're
to be
stretching
a
it all
Hebrew
over.
to worship this God?
Okay. Who was the new king? Does anybody know who the new king was that arose?
Pharaoh.
Rams.
What's this
I
on?
don't know what his name
No, what his
Which
name
one
was?
was?
Oh, no.
Ramses?
I heard it was written somewhere that he was an Assyrian.
I'll read this little commentary. We are not sure. At least 2 pharaohs are involved in the story of the Jewish exile in Egypt. The first pharaoh welcomed the Israelites to Egypt under the aegis of Joseph. The second pharaoh did not know Joseph and later enslaved the Israelites. The second pharaoh may have been a usurper who staged a coup, and this would explain why he behaved as if he had no knowledge of Joseph and his family. Some believe that Tutmosis III was the first pharaoh. He was the only pharaoh within the time specified in 1 Kings 6:1 who reigned long enough, 54 years, to have been on the throne at the time Moses' flight and to die shortly before his return, and Amenhotep II to be the pharaoh of the Exodus. So, it's interesting. You know, they've done archaeological studies, and they say that the Exodus didn't occur because it was a lot later than what it was. But it actually, they have missed the archaeologists have missed the dating, and so it actually occurred, around 1250 BC. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting.
Really close to a time, half a time.
Mm-hmm. So, how did the new king regard the Israelites in Egypt?
They're too big for us. Let's fight
See,
and slay them.
It's interesting. He perceived them as a political threat. Have y'all noticed that Christianity is becoming a political threat in the United States?
Well, true
Good morning. This is Rob.
Oh, yeah. We remember you.
Robert Wade squared.
Robert Wade too.
That's it.
Okay.
We're glad to see you.
The new king regarded the Israel as a political threat. If you notice, in all countries that are non-Christians, the people that believe are a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Why are Christians a threat in any nation?
Because our law does not come from the earth or earthly powers.
Because we're claiming a different king than what the other people want to
I
claim.
guess you could say that's true of the Jewish people too, wherever they are.
Yeah, they're perceived as a threat.
perceived as a big
Because they
threat, because they're
live-
the chosen.
Yeah, well, they live under a different set of
Yes.
laws. We'll cover this later.
Uh-oh.
We're not political
I don't want to jump.
You don't
ahead.
want to give it away.
Okay. Why did the Pharaoh? Why did he set taskmasters over the Levites? I mean, over the Israelites.
Hold them down, put the thumb on their back, keep them from taking over.
Okay, what does that do?
Bent down and broke back.
Makes them subservient and obedient.
No, what does it do? It crushes your spirit.
Makes you so tired you can't fight
Okay.
back.
But if you serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you're oppressed, but you cling to Him, what does that do?
That's a spirit you're not going to crush.
It's a spirit you can't crush. That's right. The people in the Holocaust that survived were the ones that looked for ways to survive. In other words, they said a lot of them said we have to survive to tell the world what happened to us,
Mm-hmm.
and it was because of what we believe. So, and I'm not saying that's 100% of why people survived. I mean, there was lots of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that they said, no matter what you do to us, we are going to survive. And I think that's played out in the Exodus.
Does it Patton, does that make him a bit of a prophet? Take a lot of pictures because someday some son of a is going to say this didn't happen.
Well, that was Eisenhower.
There's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, he said, that's what he said. He said, document this thoroughly. He said, because someday someone's going to say this did not happen.
And what are they saying nowadays? It didn't happen.
That's right.
That's why I'm saying
It's
the
got a
whole
lot of gross
bit of a
things.
prophet.
Okay. And so what did the slavery of the Israelites involve?
Hard work, bondage.
Field work, building monuments,
Hard labor.
hard labor, backbreaking labor.
Right. It involved labor, back-breaking work. According to Rashi, the people were first forced to work 24-hour shifts. I think that's a little hyperbole there.
More than likely. Well, let's hope so.
But I mean, back-breaking work, I mean, it indicates that they said, you know, if you keep them busy, they're not gonna be able to rebel.
Or multiply, and yet they still multiply.
Okay. 18 through 2:10. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, you have done this, and let the male children live. Why have you done this, and let the male children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all the people, every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast in the Nile, but you shall let the daughters live. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds, and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrew children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. So the girl went, called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And when the child grew older, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because she said, I drew him out of water. So, how did God respond to the deception of the midwives?
He blessed them.
Gave family.
Children.
Yeah, he granted them offspring of their own.
Which probably became part of the mixed multitude.
I would say so. So why did Pharaoh murder innocent babies?
Because he wanted to get rid of the liver.
Now, this is an interesting thing, and I know it's not scriptural, but it makes a lot of sense.
Wanted to keep their strength down.
According to the Midrash, Pharaoh had a disturbing prophetic dream like his predecessor. He saw himself sitting on his throne in all his regal glory. As he lifted his eyes, however, an old man appeared holding a balance in his hand. And the old man placed all the nobles and governors of Egypt on one side of the balance, and on the other side he placed one small lamb. Now remember, these are the teachers in Israel that said this. One small lamb. To Pharaoh's great astonishment, however, the lamb outweighed all the leaders of Egypt. When the king asked his advisors to interpret the dream, they told him that it foretold of a coming king who would destroy the land, kill the Egyptians, and set the Israelites free. The royal astrologers agreed with the advisors and told the king that the stars indicated that such a redeemer would indeed come, but it was unclear if it would be an Egyptian or an Israelite. Recall that Moses was both an Israelite raised as an Egyptian. For this reason, the king decreed that the death of all the newborn sons of Egypt, whether Israelite or Egyptian. When the king further asked how the Redeemer would be stopped, the astrologer said he would die by water. Recall Moses' sin by striking the rock. So the king decreed that babies should be killed by being thrown into the Nile River. So, what's significant about being thrown in the Nile River? Do y'all remember from last year?
That if they survived.
Can I add one other thing to that?
You can add whatever.
There was the god of the Nile River, which was the crocodile.
Mhm.
And they were sacrificing these children to that crocodile.
Right. Well, yeah, what they did was when someone was convicted of a crime, they would bind them and throw them into the river. And if they survived, in other words, if the god of the river let them live and they got out, then they were innocent. But if they died, even though they were bound and thrown into the river, then they were guilty. And so by throwing the babies into the river, they were saying the god of the Nile, whom we worship, will determine, just as if they were criminals, whether they should survive. And so when the daughter of Pharaoh drew him out, that's why they couldn't kill the baby. It's because, they said
Innocent.
he survived, he's innocent. So that's the reason Moses was preserved.
There's some other takes on that too.
Yeah, there are. There are many. So what was Moses' original name?
His original?
Well, Jochebed saw that he was good, therefore called him Tov, which is good in Hebrew. But Miriam,
His sister?
his sister, called him Tobiah, alluding that he would be the Redeemer of Israel, though of course the Lord is the Redeemer of Israel. Moses was good because he had a good heart, was humble, and was willing to serve the Israelites.
Even though they did take him off once or twice.
So does anybody know what Pharaoh's daughter's name was?
Pharaoh's daughter.
Nobody knows?
Pharaoh's daughter.
Nobody knows. That's right. Nobody knows. What does the Jewish sages, what did they say her name was?
And what did those places say?
It's been a couple days since I've watched the Ten Commandments, so I can't tell you.
Batya.
But, yeah,
Batya, daughter of the Lord. Batya. To honor her as a proselyte. They said that she was adopted into the tribes. You know how the
Honorary.
yeah they don't want to have mixed blood, so you have to be a proselyte. How old was Moses when he was adopted?
3 months.
Mm-hmm.
3 months old. It's 3 months old.
I'm guessing 6. 6 months old.
Well, the Midrash says that Jochebed nursed Moses for 24 months and then brought him to Pharaoh's daughter. From that time on, Moses did not leave the palace as if he were actually the prince's son. The princess called the child Moses because she drew him out, Masah, from the waters. Note that the name is in the active voice of the verb, not passive, prophetically indicating that Moses would draw the Israelites out of Egypt. You think that's prophetic, that he would draw the Israelites out?
Makes a good story.
Well,
Yeah,
but
at
if
24 months, when were they weaned? I mean,
That's about the time.
that's
they were.
2 years.
yeah,
2.5
2 years.
old.
yeah, back
Well,
then,
2 years and 3 months.
Yeah.
Since he was found at 3 months
they
Yeah.
didn't have store
in the
bought milk.
basket.
Right. Well, if it's prophetic, is Moses a picture of Yeshua?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeshua is a prophet like one.
right. Well, what I'm saying is he was to draw the people out of Egypt, who Yeshua is to draw his people out of the world, right?
So you're saying Moses sat down and took a pencil and drew the people leaving Egypt?
That's enough.
It's not even funny.
Number 3. Exodus 2:11 through 25. And one day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together, and he said to the man in the wrong, "Why do you strike your companion?" And he answered, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Egypt and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, For he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. During those many days the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. So, why is it ironic that Moses was an adopted prince of Egypt?
Ironic?
It's ironic because Pharaoh had made an elaborate plan to kill every Hebrew by drowning him in the Nile, and his daughter delivered the Hebrew savior out of the water. So it's ironic that it's just like Joseph going to Egypt was sent to be the savior. So what they meant for bad turned out to be good. And what Pharaoh meant for bad turned out to be good, because what he did enabled
Did the
their
opposite of
Redeemer
what his
to
plan
come.
was.
Ended up being his downfall.
Right.
It's a nice symbolism too,
yeah.
because Moses was both, Gentile and Hebrew, as Yeshua came to save both houses of Israel, if you will.
Right.
As a symbol.
So how did God use Moses' upbringing as a prince of Egypt to help Israel?
He knew their ways. He knew how they'd work. He learned the military organization ways to be able to help and lead them out.
That's right. He knew all
He was
the
well
laws
educated.
and the manners of Egypt. You know, I mean,
But he still had a heart for his own kind because he stopped them from fighting.
right. I've got these out of order.
Probably knew the trading with the nations, things too, diplomacy and all that from other nations. I don't know.
He knew military tactics.
Yeah, they said that.
Yeah.
But he would even know the ways of their sorcerers, because like when he threw the staff down and it turned into a snake, he knew what they would do, and he was prepared to counteract.
None of that.
Mm-hmm. So, why did Moses kill the Egyptian officer?
Because he was beaten in the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Probably let his temper get the best of him.
I still want to know how that other Hebrew guy
He was
knew
beating down one of his brothers.
that he killed the
Yeah.
He might have
It's
been the one that he was.
it's interesting that we don't get any backstory.
Yeah, we don't.
It just says he saw an Egyptian mistreating a Hebrew, so he killed him.
Mhm.
And then the next thing it is that he sees two of his brothers fighting, and it may be one of them that he was mistreating. So you'd kind of have to figure that, because then he said, "You're going to do the same to us.
Right.
You're going to kill us like you
Either
did
that
the
or-
Egyptian."
Word had already spread quickly
Right.
through.
But in there it says he looked this way and that, and didn't see anybody, so he killed him and buried him in the sand.
Maybe a little foreshadowing of the dishonest servant.
Reckon?
I forgave you. Why did you go choke the other one for the same thing?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So when the one said, "Are you going to do to us like you did to the Egyptian? You're going to kill us like you did. Why are you think you're a prince over us?" I mean, he's accusing him. So why is he doing that?
You have a type of Satan in there accusing Yeshua. I don't know.
Well, that's true. But what was Moses doing?
Protecting his
He was
people.
protecting his people.
Yeah, Nobody should.
Right, but he saw it and he was doing it in his own power. He had not been called by God to do it yet.
Yeah.
He went out, saw the oppression, and said, "I'm going to do something about this."
Yeah.
But
It wasn't the right way.
God hadn't contacted him yet. He had no idea. I mean, I guess he could think in his own mind, "Those are my people. God put me in this place. Maybe I should do something."
Mm.
But, you know, we do the same thing. We get the cart before the horse. In other words, what did Paul say? He said, through prayer and supplication. In other words, try to determine what we need to do before we just jump off and do it. It doesn't say that Moses was seeking God's will. He was saying, I need to do something. And then, 40 years later, when he's at the burning bush, he says, he's thinking in his mind, I mean, you can suppose this, he's thinking in his mind, I tried this once before, it didn't work out. Are you going to send me down there to get killed again? So you can see why he's thinking he's going to make excuses. So where did Moses flee after he killed the Egyptian?
Midian.
Midian. Do y'all remember later on it talks about when Aaron and what's the sister's name? Miriam. Say because of the Cushite woman. But who are the Cushites? The Ethiopians. See, in the Talmud it states that when Moses left Egypt, he went to Cush, he went to Ethiopia, and he married the queen of Ethiopia and fought her battles for 20 years. And then when they were defeated, he went to Midian, and he was in Midian 20 years. And when they accuse him of marrying the Cushite woman, that's what they're referring to. It doesn't say that in the Torah, but it says that in their extra writings, their oral tradition. But I think it's interesting that, in there it says the Cushite woman, and it says he did in fact marry a Cushite. So, but it doesn't go into the details. But it alludes to the fact that he was a military leader, that he fought the battles and defended Ethiopia against the Egyptians. I don't know how much, if any at all weight we should put on that, but it does indicate that, he was familiar with battle, so to speak.
There is a substantial Jewish population in Ethiopia, though. There are a lot of
Yeah.
Galatians that come to Aliyah in Israel.
Yeah. Okay, we got to read the next section, which is
On the first sentence of the next section, it says their father-in-law was Jethro, but in verse 18 of the previous section, it says
Reuel. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, there's
name.
like several different names for him.
Yeah.
He was the priest of Midian, and I don't even remember what Reuel means. I'd have to.
Seed of God.
Yeah.
I mean, like Reuben, seed of son.
Mhm.
And Reuel.
Yeah.
That's my extrapolation.
That's probably what it is. Okay. Which one? I went on number 4? Yeah. 3, 1 through 15. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mount of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside, God called him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. And then he said, Do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face and was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, surely send the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. So, God in here describes himself as I am who I am. Ehe, Esher, Ehe. Then God went on to further explain the meaning of his name through a series of relationships. Say this to the people of Israel. Yahweh is my name. Namely, the God of your fathers, namely, the God of Abraham, namely, the God of Isaac, namely, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever. Thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. How does this fact that Yahweh repeatedly identifies himself as the God of Israel affect our understanding of who he is? How does that affect our understanding? When he says, I'm the God of Israel. In other words, he names Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Jacob being Israel. So our understanding of who we are is we have to be in the nation of Israel. I mean, God did not come to create a religion. He came to create a kingdom with loyal followers.
Ephesians, it says we're grafted into the commonwealth of Israel.
Right, the commonwealth. And what is it? There is no difference between Jew and Gentile. You're either a member of God's nation and subordinate to him, or you're of the world. You're of the other nations and you follow other gods. You do whatever you want. But if you're in Israel, you follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is the bottom line. And that's why God is saying this. I am namely the God of Israel, my people that I have called out. So we have to understand that we are people of a kingdom, not people of a religion. We are in God's kingdom, and he's the creator and the sustainer of the universe. So if we want to be citizens of the universe, we need to be under his authority.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to read number 4? Is it? 5?
Yes. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. And now, please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house, for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians. Then Moshe answered, But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, Yahweh did not appear to you. Yahweh said to him, What is that in your hand? He said, A staff. And he said, Throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moshe ran from it. But Yahweh said to Moshe, Put out your hand and catch it by the tail. So he put out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand, that they may believe that Yahweh, the Elohim of their fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, has appeared to you. Again Yahweh said to him, Put your hand inside your cloak. And he put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, behold, the hand was leprous, like snow. Then Elohim said, Put your hand back inside your cloak. So he put his hand back inside his cloak, and when he took it out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you, Elohim said, or listen to the first sign, they may believe the latter sign. But if they will not believe even these 2 signs, or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. But Moshe said to Yahweh, O Yahweh, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and tongue. Then Yahweh said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall speak. But he said, Oh, Yahweh, please send someone else. Then the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moshe, and he said, Is there not Aharon your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as Elohim to him. And take in your hand this staff, with which you shall do the signs.
The signs.
The proof.
They will see the sign.
Okay, so here he's called Moses, and Moses is saying, I don't want to do it. And so he says, your brother is on the way. He'll speak for you. And I'll put my words in yours and his mouth. So when he says, I'll put my words in you and in Aaron's mouth, what's he saying?
The Spirit will be on you.
No,
You
he's
don't
saying
have to rely on your own.
he's telling Moses, he said, I'm going to have him speak, but I'm not putting him above you. So, I mean, it's important that Moses retains his leadership, right? And but it's interesting. It's unlike unlike the movie The Exodus, where it shows Moses doing all the things, that Aaron actually spoke, and Aaron actually held the staff and did the things. And I think when I remember the movie, and then after I read the account, is they did Aaron a disservice, because I mean he was an integral part. I mean, I know that Aaron messed up when he built the golden calf, but what did Moses say later in Deuteronomy? He said, I prayed for Aaron so that God would not kill you. I hear footsteps again. Oh, come on in. Look who's here. We got chairs right back here. So how should we perceive Aaron in his relationship with Moses is what I'm getting at.
His right-hand man.
His right-hand man.
Well, Aaron was chosen also.
Yeah, Aaron was chosen also because he said, see, I have called Aaron. He's on his way.
Right.
In other words,
Prepared him
he's
and
already
prepared him.
prepared Aaron. I mean, we think of it as Moses was the one. But what is it people always say? That God has the solution to the problem before we even know there's a problem.
Yeah.
In other words, he already has Aaron on his way before Moses knows that there's an argument.
He already had John on the way too.
Hmm?
He already had John on the way too.
John on the way too. Is that in this portion
No,
here?
it's later on. I'm just saying he already had John on the way to speak before he arrived.
Right. Okay. We're going to go to number 6 because we're quickly running out of time. Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go back to my brothers in Egypt and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. And so the Lord said to Moses, so the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life were dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I have hardened his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn, and I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way to the Lord met him, and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint, and cut off the son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it, and said, surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me. So she let him alone. It was then that she said, a bridegroom of blood, because of the circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him to speak, and all of the signs that he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. And Aaron spoke the words that the Lord had spoke to Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel, and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. So, what's the story of circumcision of Moses all about? A bridegroom of blood. What is Zipporah? What Zipporah would call Moses when his life would be demand the blood of the son. So,
Symbolic. Sure.
yeah, there's a lot of symbolism in there. The bridegroom of blood. And what does that allude to?
Because
It was while lodging on their way to flee the children of Abraham from the land of Egypt, and Moses had not bothered to seal his son, that God brought his life, that sought his life for the matter. In other words, he was saying, you can't go and be disobedient.
Can't be the leader and
You
not
can't-
follow them.
Yeah, you can't be the one in charge if you're not willing to do what I've commanded your forefathers to do. I mean, when it speaks of Moses and it speaks of Yeshua, what is their main main thread of their likenesses?
Obedience.
The obedience of what God called them to do. And when you're not obedient, what happens?
Cursed.
Well,
Curse yourself.
Walking
you suffer the
outside the way.
you suffer the
You're
consequences.
corrected.
You suffer the consequences. Yeshua was obedient in all that he was called to do, and so he accomplished everything that he was supposed to. Moses, being a picture, but he wasn't quite obedient in all things. He struck the rock instead of
Yes.
speaking to the rock. He did things that caused him not to be perfect, as our Father in heaven is perfect. And so those things are brought out so that we can see what God did for us through His Savior.
So would you say he had a temper and it got into trouble?
Yes.
As we see often.
Don't sin in your anger.
So when he, so if Moses' son was not circumcised, would he be perceived as obedient to his brethren?
No.
No.
So I mean, it's important. I mean, things are important. What we do is important. How we live is important. And God wouldn't put these things in His Word if they didn't have meaning for us. True?
And if he
Might be
being,
kind of like why Timothy was circumcised.
and if he being the leader didn't circumcise, then all the other people would be like, well, if you didn't listen, why do we have to listen?
Mm-hmm. So could I get you to read that whole last page?
She's thinking about it.
I know, she's
I know.
giving me the evil eye.
Afterward Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, Who is the Lord, that you should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover I will not let Israel go. Then they said, The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, Let us go and offer the sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves, wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for the straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, Complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over him, were beaten and were asked, Why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday, as in the past? Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and said to Pharaoh, "Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, 'Make bricks.' And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people." But he said, "You are idle, you are idle. That is why you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you shall deliver the same number of bricks." The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, "You shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day." They met Moshe and Aharon, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, "The Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Then Moshe turned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." But the Lord said to Moshe, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of this land."
Okay, so, back up in the beginning, it says God told Moses, he said, "I'm going to send you there, but he's going to harden his heart, and he's not going to do what I ask him to." And then it comes down to the end here, and Moses says to the Lord, "Why have you done this to this people? Why did you send me? For you haven't delivered them at all." But God told him up in the beginning, he said, "I'm going to do this stuff. He's going to harden his heart, and he's not going to do it." I mean, he told him in the beginning, and then God's dressing him down. Moses is dressing God down for, "You haven't done what you said you were going to do."
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty bold, if you ask me. But anyway, God didn't get on to him. He just said, "Now you're going to see what I'm going to do." But what does that statement indicate?
Which one?
You
That
gotta
God's
you gotta
timing.
trust in the Lord. You gotta
Yeah,
believe
he says,
His-
"Now you're
His
going to
time.
see what I'm going to do." He said, I told you before this was going to
I
happen,
got a plan, and I'm going to
and
follow my
you
plan.
didn't. He's saying you didn't even believe it, but now you're going to see what I'm going to do. He said, "I'm going to show you." In here, we had the midwives who deliberately defied the king's orders. Was there any other instances in the scripture where people defied orders of the government? In what do you call it? In the New Testament, Paul says, God has put rulers over you. You need to be subject to the laws of wherever you live. They were oppressed by the Romans, but he said, do what the Romans say. He said, do what's right.
What about Pharaoh's daughter?
She really was kind of defiant, too.
She said Daniel.
Well,
What about the Maccabees?
there's Rahab. What did Rahab do?
Hid the spies and
Yeah.
protected
She
them.
refused to expose the spies.
Mhm.
There's Obadiah's defiance of King Ahaz's order to kill the prophets. There's King Saul's servants' refusal to murder the priest Ahimelech. There's Daniel's refusal to obey the king's order to refrain from praying. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refusal to bow to the image. There's Esther's disobedience to the edict of Ahasuerus. What is that? Do y'all know what her disobedience was?
Extend the scepter.
Yeah, she went before him without being invited. And he could have killed her for doing it, but he extended. She took a chance. Only in a time as this. John the Baptist's refusal to stop criticizing Herod Antipas. Yeshua's refusal to answer Herod's questions. Simon Peter's refusal to stop preaching, and Peter's escape from prison by the hand of an angel. So the question is, in general, Christians are to obey the government. Though there's examples, like we just looked at, to indicate there are times when we should not do so. What criteria do we, and you, me, should be used to decide such cases? How do we decide when it's time?
Does it go against God's laws?
Mm-hmm. So in this case, like Rahab, she says, I know that you follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that we know that he delivered you out and that he's been with you for 40 years in the wilderness. Now, what would 40 years in the wilderness mean to Rahab?
Is it tough?
It's a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a lifetime, but they saw what they did to the Egyptians, and then they saw that they remained a nation and were obedient in the wilderness.
It's faithfulness, right?
Faithfulness. And so she said, we know, and our country is fearful because we see this mighty
God that does these
things. So she had the fear of God. She said, I'm going to defy the rulers here because I know who the winner is going to be. We've seen what you do, what he's done. And it's the same with Obadiah and King Saul's servants. They all said, we can't go against God. We have to follow what he says, even unto death. So, do we, as Christians, do we have the characteristics of these people that we're willing to follow God's commandments even unto death?
We should.
I mean, that's what these people did. They defied the ruler, and they could be killed. Some of them were. But
It's coming.
we live in the time, like I said before, we're in a political war where we're being condemned for standing up for Christian principles. You know, to stand against abortion, to stand against things that go against what God's law commands us not to do. And it's going to be used more and more against us. I think that's just part of the, I've said before, the separation of the wheat and the tares. How do you know the wheat from the tare when they look alike? Well, it's by their fruit. And if we stand for what we believe in, then we are wheat.
Heart.
And if we do not stand, we're tares. And we're cut down and thrown in the fire. So, serious consequences. Anyway, I got to finish up here. What have I got here? Got this. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except God, and those that exist have been instituted by him. I just put those scriptures in because therefore everyone who resists the authorities resists the God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For the rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what is in good, and you will receive his approval. For he is the God, the servant of the good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to his very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them, taxes whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. So, throughout the New Testament, Paul preached about being obedient to authority. But it's authority that doesn't conflict with God's law. You can't be obedient to something that God stands against. And he never said, he said, I put these rulers in place for your benefit. But when that rule becomes against your benefit, you have to stand against it. So, anyway.
I heard something earlier this week, maybe last week, I'm not sure. But they alluded to that the authority that Paul was talking about was the synagogue authority, not the Roman authority. And it talked about some of the references sound like they refer to governmental authority, but they could also refer to the authorities of the synagogues that they were in. Because I guess there were some different teachings going around at that time.
Right. Well, it's kind of like the teaching of when Jesus was teaching his disciples, and he would do things on the Shabbat that they say were work. And for instance, one of the big deals was healing on the Shabbat. And so there's the instance where he heals the blind man, but he spits on the dirt and takes the mud and smears it on his eyes and then tells him to go wash it off, and then he sees. Well, do you think he could have just said, you have your sight back, and he would have gotten his sight back? With just spit. Okay. Well, why did he go through spitting on the mud, on the dirt, making the mud, smearing it on his eyes, and tell him to go wash it off? Why did he do that?
Goading the Pharisee.
Well, because that's what they were railing against, was that if you go to heal somebody and you're taking care of them and you're comforting them, you're doing things, and their life is not in danger, that you can wait and do that tomorrow. And he was saying no. He said, God is a God of mercy and love. And if you see someone that you can help them now.
Weightier matters.
It's a weightier matter than what you're doing. So he was doing those things to say, see, I can do this, and it's good because I'm helping him out. Even though he could have just healed him with a touch or healed him with his word, he was showing the Pharisees and the Sadducees and stuff. He says, you are going after the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. He said, do what is to be obedient on the Shabbat, but when you see something that needs to be done on the Shabbat that's a weightier matter, do that. Now we can go to Calvin.
Yay, Calvin.
Calvin here. I'm in a very crabby mood, so everybody just leave me alone. I hate everyone.
What a face.
Huh? Nobody recognizes my hint to smother me with affection.
Needed a hug, probably.
Okay. He's talking about the weightier matter. Even though I'm upset, you need to cut me some slack here.
I liked it.
Okay, next week is Vaera and I appeared. It's good because we start all the plagues, right?
Here you are.
The plagues.
Oh,
It's
The
fun.
plagues. Okay, join me in the blessing. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth, Yeshua our Messiah, and set everlasting life in our midst. Blessed art thou, O Lord, giver of the Torah. And in Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanem Torah emet, Yeshua Meshikenu, Bekai olam natah betukenu, Baruch atah Adonai notin ha-Torah. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make you stumble. What's the next one?
The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes
They
them
do not
stumble.
know what makes them stumble. Okay, well, thank y'all for being here. We'll
Thanks, Paul.
see you next.
Thank you, Paul.
We love you, Paul. We'll smother you with affection.
What's that?
They'll smother you with a.
Smother you. Have y'all been talking to Zoe about this smothering business?
No, that's the message she got from Calvin.
Yeah, get
Or we
that.
might give you grief for still having Shemot up there in the next fire.
Do what?
He's not gonna do that.
No, it did.
Oh, it did say
Yeah,
Shemot?
when it said the next one's by air,